Welcome back, everybody, to These Aren't the Nerds You're Looking For. Lorenzo and sitting here with
Kevin Horde.
How you doing, my man?
Doing well. I'm gonna try to be a little more excited this week.
Oh my God.
Last week we talked about the end of the Water War arc, and that, just kind of bummed me out because
yeah.
If you guys made it all the way to the end of that, you will find out that the best thing that we had to say about it was that it was boring as hell. But Riff Tamsin gets his head blown off.
Yeah. But luckily, we're moving on. This week, it's Shadow Warrior Season 4, Episode 4. Release date September 30th, 2011. Written by Daniel Arkin. Directed by Brian Kalin O'Connell.
Yep.
No shark folk in this one.
No shark folk.
So spoilers ahead, no shark folk. We got that much going for this one. Fortune cookie is who a person truly is cannot be seen with the eye.
Who you got, buddy?
I went with Shmi with this one.
I went with the obvious choice of Maz Kanata.
Yes. Yep. Maz is the one. Indeed.
But let me hear your Shmi theory so that I can shut it down.
I just figured that it was going to be like a piece of advice that she might have given to Anakin regarding his like slave upbringing. Right? So like, hey, you're not the slave that you were raised to be. You can be more. Right? So everybody else sees a slave, but I know you're like a capable little 10-year-old boy.
Yeah.
So that's what I got. Maz makes sense for sure.
Yeah, I'm going to stick with Maz.
Yeah, stick with Maz. What do we got going on in this episode here? We have a newsreel that actually sets up this episode.
Yep, it's just a setup for this. Talks about war and some stuff, and suggests that the Gungans are potentially going to side with the Separatists. I have questions.
Yep. We'll get to that, I'm sure. Basically, the only major piece of setup is Padme is coming back to Naboo.
Yep,
with Anakin to try and figure out the potential questions that you may also have.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah. So basically, we get Padme and Anakin heading straight to Theed, and then they head to the lake where the Gungans are, and they're trying to find Jar Jar, right?
Yeah, Anakin calls Jar Jar. So I guess they're phone number buddies. They're not just like Facebook pals. They got each other's digits.
Yep. Jar Jar shows up.
Yeah.
Takes them on down in one of those nice little Gungan ships that we saw back from episode 1. The
weird. Oh yeah, the what is that? Unabongo.
Yes. Yeah. So they're riding down one of those. The issue seems to be that Boss Leone sounds like he wants to side with the Separatists and intends to march on Theed, right?
Yeah, when they arrive at Utagunga, they just kind of sit in on a meeting of the elders, I guess is what that is.
Is it a meeting? I read it as like a rally.
Okay.
Like a public rally, it seemed. It seemed like he was trying to pull not only support with other politicians of the Gungans,
okay,
but also just the general public is how I read that.
Okay.
Because he seems to be generally talking to everybody, and he's like, oh, like, they have been kicking us around for too long, and we will no longer be under the water, but we'll be on top. On top, I say.
Do you think that the Gungans originated as an underwater species and then developed the ability to live on land as well? Or did they develop as an on-land species and develop the ability to live underwater with their special water air-breathing loogies?
I think it went from land to sea.
Okay.
Based on their
their bipedalness.
Yeah.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you, especially because they have like an elephant foot, and their like sacred place is on land, with like the ancient ruins and big Olmec heads and shit. Is on land. It's not somewhere under sea.
Yeah, especially since like being underwater, they still need to have like the dry dwellings, right? They still have like,
okay,
right?
Yeah,
like they're underwater, but they still have to go into like the dry zones, like they're in those shielded,
right,
living city spaces, right?
Right.
So the city center is still dry. It's just underwater.
That's a very good point.
So, yeah, I figured that their normal is dry land dwelling, but they just happen to have the ability to
They have
traverse
adapted
underwater.
to the moist.
Yes, yeah. So we have Boss Leone talking some shit, basically. We are introduced to another member of the politics.
Okay.
Minister Richelieu, right?
Richelieu.
Yeah. So basically, what we get is Anakin and Padme trying to talk to Leone.
Mm-hmm.
And he kind of is guns ablazing with wanting to attack the land dwellers of Naboo,
Right.
I guess.
The Naboobians.
Yes.
Is that what they're called?
I don't think we've ever determined that.
It's like the Gungans and the Naboobians.
Nabians? Nubians?
Their ships are called Nubian, and that's just weird.
That is very weird. That is slightly problematic, as many other things originating from Episode 1 are, regarding weird ethnic references. Anyways, what do we got? So Anakin and Padme trying to talk to Leone. They seem to notice that he seems off, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Right? He's kind of not looking at anybody in the eye, and he's talking in a weird pace. This seems to happen fairly quickly, where they discover he's under some sort of mind control.
Yeah, and his necklace is pointed out, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Like the necklace is controlling his behavior. And I don't remember how they jumped to this conclusion. And honestly, it didn't stick out to me. I was just like, oh, okay, whatever. I'm like, it's the necklace. Cool. Like,
yeah.
Let's find out more about this necklace, where it come from and whatnot.
It's a very interesting like mystery that gets set up, and then it gets solved within about 2 seconds in terms of like, is he under mind control?
Mm-hmm.
Being the mystery, and then like, oh yes, the answer is yes, and it's on the necklace. There's still obviously the mystery of who, but the what and how is pretty quick.
The who does not last very long either.
No,
because I think they just asked Jar Jar, and Jar Jar's like, yeah, Richelieu
gave him that necklace.
Gave him that necklace, and he said he always had to wear it because it would make him a more powerful leader. Did they go into that at this point, or is that later?
Sort of. I think Jar Jar even mentions that Richelieu practices like mystical arts, even, right? So like it's all the pieces of evidence are right there, and it's solved within 2 seconds. There's like no question. They're like, oh yeah, Richelieu's the only guy who would have given him that necklace. Also, by the way, he already practices like
ancient. It's like ancient Gungan voodoo, I think is what it's called. At least that's what my note says. So
yeah. So like
maybe.
So it's very clear. Like we're set up pretty quickly, and then very quickly from here, like literally the next scene, we get Richelieu talking to Count Dooku via underwater holocall.
Underwater holocall.
Yeah. So we get a quick little conversation between Dooku and Lu about how Lu was promised like freedom for helping the Separatists get into Naboo, like freedom for the Gungans or something like that.
I didn't catch that, so I have no comment.
Yeah, I don't know. It's a weird like little throwaway thing.
Yeah, my note there's Richelieu talking about how he's going to make it easy for the Separatists and the droids to come in and take over the planet.
Yeah. So while this conversation is happening, Anakin, Padme, and a recovered Leone are heading to confront Lou about the trickery that has taken place. And for whatever reason, Leone is like, well, let me go talk to him by myself. I have to go talk to myself. Like, it just confuses me because the dude was just placed under a literal spell.
Yeah, I think it's an issue of not like arrogance, but of pride, maybe. Like he's gonna go to Richelieu, and maybe he's doing this not to like set Richelieu off, like to confront him by himself, right? Like, I'll go in, I'll talk to him, and I'll tell him I know what's up. And now that I know what he's up to, I can better prepare myself, and I'm the boss. I'm in charge anyway. I'll take care of it. Mm-hmm. So that didn't seem too off to me. Okay. It's pretty standard for the Clone Wars, where it's like a group of people know something is awry. Mm-hmm. One person goes in to take care of it. Right. Never goes according to plan. Mm-hmm. So, before we get too much further in,
yeah,
what do you think of Boss Leone's voice?
It's definitely just kind of a deeper version of the general Jar Jar accent we have, for an obvious reason that will reveal itself.
Okay, well,
shortly.
We'll wait on that one then. Next question: where's Boss Nass?
I was wondering where Boss Nass was as well.
Because he's not dead.
He's not dead, and we know with hindsight that he shows up to Padme's funeral, spoiler alert, in Revenge of the Sith.
Right.
So he's there. He's still like an official.
Right.
In some form. So, yeah, I don't know where Boss Nass is.
Yeah. So, as last week, we decided I need to look into the salt content of Mon Cal. I think I also need to look into what happened to Boss Nass and maybe find out whether or not the waters of Naboo are salty or not as well.
Yeah.
Do you think that a large amount of time has passed between the end of the Water War trilogy and Shadow Warrior?
Not a lot, but enough for the Gungans to kind of get back home and relax for a second.
Okay. So, in that case, I'm guessing that Boss Leone and Richelieu stayed on Naboo, right? And
yes.
This plan has been brewing while the events of Water War were happening. Mm-hmm. Okay. I'm cool.
Yeah.
So what happens next?
Let's see. So Leone heads in, and basically immediately Richelieu starts using more incantations to try and control Leone again without the aid of Shiny Necklace. Mm-hmm. But then Anakin and Padme kind of hear, I guess, or figure out, like, hey, something's not right. I think Anakin gets, like, some sort of, like, force disturbance.
Yeah, he definitely feels something's wrong. They run in, and there's commando droids in there as well, right?
Yes. Yeah, so we get a nice little fight that happens. Leone gets stabbed in the fight.
Yep.
He gets stabbed by Richelieu, correct? Or
yeah, I have 3 notes here. It says Richelieu kills Leone. Mm-hmm. Rish escapes in Bongo, and then the next one is Rish is not dead.
Leone is not dead.
Leone is not dead. Correct.
Yeah. So Leone is stabbed and hurt and unconscious, but not dead.
Correct.
So basically, with Leone out of commission, they're concerned that the leader can't call off the attack. The last action that he requested was that they start attacking Naboo. So there is that concern. But then for some reason, Jar Jar just puts on Leonie's crown, signifying that he's a boss. And then Anakin and Padme note that Jar Jar and Boss Leonie happen to look a lot like each other.
Okay, a couple of questions.
Yes.
Why would Jar Jar do this? Because he seems to do it like subconsciously.
I don't know.
My note is something to the effect of that he Forrest Gumps his way / just bumbles into cosplaying as Boss Leonie.
Pretty much.
And second question, are Padme and Anakin race blind? And they're just like, all Gungans look alike. You look exactly like him, man.
I also wrote down that this plot point seems very problematic, at the very least.
Yeah, it kind of ties into the perpetuation of stereotypes that was built upon in The Phantom Menace.
Mm-hmm.
That being said, I'm not sure how intentional, like, I don't think it was a tie-in to anything like that. I think it is just a plot point of, let's get Jar Jar to be a shadow warrior, shall we say, and be the only one to be able to save the day because he looks just like him. I feel like there should have been some familial relationship expressed earlier in the episode, like, oh, my cousin, Boss Leone, and then
something, yeah. But
and then
I agree with you. It seems like they wrote, like they had the idea of wanting Jar Jar to do things, and then they like kind of filled in the details without thinking about how weird it kind of sounds. And honestly, it does make Padme and Anakin kind of seem racist, because there's like a half line that Jar Jar starts to spit out, and he's like, "No, we don't look anything alike. What are you?" And then they're like, "Put on this crown. Like, you're gonna do this thing and be Boss Leone and
just
tell everybody."
Dress up like him. Nobody will notice. Like, all Gungans look the same anyway, except for Boss Nass. But he's gone.
It's super like really, like, none of the Gungans really look a lot like each other, honestly. Like, you have purple ones, you have Boss Nass, you have red ones.
You have
like
Captain Tarples, who we'll see shortly with his catfish face whiskers.
Exactly. So it's they built like a story around points, I think, rather than letting it figure itself out. But
okay,
sure. So basically with that, they send so we get Risha Lu trying to gather the army and tell them, like, hey, by the way, like, Leone is dead. Like,
yeah, we cut back up to the surface, and he is he's trying to solidify the action that needs to happen to get Rish Lu to the end of his ploy, right?
Yeah. So
he announces that Leone is dead. He gives this kind of oration about how they need to definitely stick to the last thing that Leone said and invade the Naboobians, the surface dwellers, whatever they call them, and that's the only way they can honor his memory or whatever. And then Anakin makes Jar Jar pretend to be Leone and just kind of pushes him out there. Yeah. Jar Jar calls off the attack and calls Rish the enemy, right? I think all Gungans at this point are thoroughly confused, except for Rish, and he escapes again.
Yep.
And Anakin gives chase. Some droids arrive, so they're included in the chase. They're on. Are they on speeders at this point, or are they on the Cadoos?
Speeders.
Okay, because there's a point where they end up on Naboo horseback on the Cadoos, right? The two-legged DOPs.
Well, Anakin does.
Okay.
So Anakin's on one of those guys, and he's chasing Leone, or not Leone.
Rish
Lu, yeah.
Yep.
And then Padme is left behind, and let's see what happens here. So Anakin's heading off to him, and then more Separatists arrive, and they talk to Jar Jar, but because they still think that he's Leone, and they still think that Leone's under a spell, they request an audience of Leone, right?
With the general is all that he's called. Now, quick question. You said that they still think that Leone is under the spell. Do the Separatists know that?
Oh, good point. I think so because of the way Richelieu and Dooku would have been communicating. Like, I think Dooku would have been filled in on that plan.
I think Dooku knows, but I don't think that, like, the Separatists at large know. I think that they just maybe assume that, like, this stupid Gungan is, Dooku has convinced this Gungan to fight against people of his own planet.
You might be right in that. Yeah, you might be right in that.
I think this is kind of what happens when Dooku or Worm Loathsome or any of the other generals of the Separatists or their senators or whatever go to planets and they convince somebody that they need to, they're being oppressed by another group of people, like, hey, you be on our side and we'll help you fight your oppressors. Like, that's the whole point of the Confederacy of Independent Systems, is really to liberate, not to enslave. And I think sometimes, especially with the senators and stuff, it's genuine and they believe that they're doing the right thing. Dooku, however, knows he's the bad guy. He didn't give a shit. And he's all in it for self-gain. So I think that he went to Richelieu, or Richelieu more likely went to Dooku and was like, I can't stand this. Like, I want out of here. I got this idea. What do you think? And Dooku probably built upon that. So, what stuck out to me is that this tactical droid, like the ship lands, doors open, tactical droid walks straight up to Jar Jar / Leone, Boss Jar Jar, I guess we can call him, and says, you canceled the attack. Why did you cancel the attack? But the attack was just canceled like 47 seconds before this.
Right, yeah.
And this tactical droid already knows. That stuck out to me as a logistically, how did the information travel there already? How does he already know? But
I think did we already get the scene where Richelieu calls Dooku from the speeder? Where does that happen? That happens at some point, but I think that happens after this.
I think it happens afterwards.
It definitely happens, but it definitely happens afterwards. So yeah, you're right. Because it also kind of brought up this weird thing there where it was really weird seeing, so just kind of jumping ahead to that scene, it was really weird seeing Dooku talking to somebody on a speeder. Because, I've brought this up like multiple times, like the issue of eyeline.
It always works out though, man.
Yeah, but then in this one, it's like really weird because like I don't know where anybody is looking at each other because like from Dooku's vantage point, it looks like he's looking from at the side of the speeder.
Okay.
Like he's watching it like travel sideways like a Mario game, like in a 2D Mario platforming game.
I'm with you.
At least that's what I remember. So then, where is the hollow of Dooku showing up?
It's got to be in front. It's got to be in front of him because otherwise he'd crash the speeder. Like he needs to be able to look. It's like a heads-up display or like projected on what would be the windshield or the dashboard, right? So that he can continue looking forward, but still converse.
Yes.
Which is probably why it looks a little bit funky from Dooku's perspective. Because it kind of looks like old Richelieu is like looking past him.
Right. Because like, why wouldn't it be like that? Like when people like do FaceTime and they hold their phone way low, like in that unflattering part of your face, right?
You're not supposed to do that.
No, don't do that.
My bad.
But hold the phone up. Hold the phone up. So yeah, I just found that interesting. Like it was nothing like breaking to me in terms of the story or whatever. Just me, like in that weird technical term. I found that really interesting, but we did skip over a big thing regarding the what happens after Jar Jar gets approached by this tactical droid, correct?
Yeah, the tactical droid says, like, I'm taking you to the general to discuss, like, we'll get to the bottom of this, right? Basically. Mm-hmm. And the general in question is General Grievous.
Indeed.
I was a little surprised by this.
I was surprised as well. I have no memory of this from my first view through, by the way.
I do not
no
either.
Memory of this.
I don't remember this episode at all. I really remember Water War and the two after that.
I didn't remember those at all either.
I had strong feelings about that, which I've already made clear. But this one I did not remember. And Jar Jar gets stuck in this situation where he's pretending to be somebody else to make better things happen, and then he gets pitted against General Grievous, and I was like, oh shit, man, it's getting real in here.
Yeah, I will say I found it interesting to think that in this universe, like Jar Jar and Grievous have encountered each other. Like, I find it interesting that the Clone Wars allows for that, and I'm not saying that's good or bad. It just feels thematically weird to me.
Yes. I would agree with you in the beginning of the episode, but not in the end of the episode.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So let's move forward with what happens. Jar Jar definitely has like some Jar Jar shenanigans, like the entire meeting with Grievous, and we kind of cut back and forth for a little bit between Jar Jar in the meeting and Anakin on Richelieu Chase. But the way that we start is that like Jar Jar sits in the chair, and it's like it must be, like a nice high back rolly chair with some adjustable armrest and whatnot, because it's like moving up and down, and it's just kind of typical Jar Jar nonsense.
Right.
But I think that it plays well here, because I can imagine like Jar Jar trying to like waste time, way back in Cat and Mouse, I think it was. Somewhere around there. One of the first episodes that we saw, within the first three, I will say. Obi-Wan, the great negotiator, right, sits down with Worm Loathsome, and he's like, oh, well, we can't talk until we have tea, and he has like his own method of like drawing things out, because he knows Anakin's like doing what Anakin needs to do.
Right.
This is Jar Jar's way of doing that, and it's just, it works in the Jar Jar way of, you can just imagine Grievous sitting there going, what an idiot, like, who put this guy in charge, and why is he sitting across the table from me?
I don't disagree with you, yeah. Like, nothing about Jar Jar here is particularly off for me,
It's
the
like
way he can be.
It's like wonderful Jar Jar. Like,
yes, I think it's actually okay.
Normally, I think people would complain like, "Oh, Jar Jar is such a bumbling idiot," but like here, it works well.
Yeah, because like it's Grievous, so like yes, he would be nervous. I understand his need to try and run the plan through, but also just fear of Grievous and the tension that brings as well.
And then there's also this clever thing that Jar Jar does where Captain Tarpals comes in with him, and then Jar Jar is like basically talking in Jar Jar gibberish. And I didn't even write the quote down because I out of context, I wouldn't even know what the hell it meant, right? But he says something to Tarpals, and Tarpals completely understands. I think he says something like, good job on the talkie or something.
Yeah.
And Tarpals is like, totally gets it, excuses himself, goes outside, and reports to Padme. And then Padme's like, no, like, time out. You got to leave him in there. We need to capture Grievous.
Yep.
Like, this is not a rescue mission for Jar Jar to get him out of there. This is leave Jar Jar in there, and we're going to come and capture Grievous.
Yep.
So at that point, we cut back over to Anakin. Some probe droids show up. Anakin's Kadu gets shot.
Yep.
Which is kind of sad.
And he falls right off.
Side note, did you catch when we were underwater at Utagunga and there is Kadu that is swimming?
No, I did not catch that.
There totally is. There is a Gungan riding a Kadu that is swimming underwater.
Very nice.
Yeah. So they not only do Gungans have like elephant feet, but they also ride like two-legged, snouted mammal horses things that can swim underwater.
And they can swim underwater. That's cool.
That's cool. After Anakin's Kadu is taken out, he does some deft lightsabering and takes the droids out, and then continues to run after Richelieu, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we cut back over to Jar Jar and Grievous, and Jar Jar is just kind of like humming to himself and trying to prolong this meeting. Grievous, however, gets pissed and basically accuses him of not being Leone. I guess you could say that he figured it out.
Yes. Yeah.
And overreacts. He like kicks the table at Jar Jar, which ends up opening the exit door.
Mm-hmm.
Jar Jar takes advantage of Grievous being ticked off, and Grievous is doing something, so Jar Jar is able to escape. When he gets outside, Tarpals is there.
Mm-hmm.
Grievous comes out. The entire droid army is shut down.
Yeah. We don't know how. We don't know what the process was, but they are.
And honestly, I don't even really care.
Yeah, I think it's fine.
Normally, I would be like, okay, I need to know these details, but I think this is something that Padme was working on. Padme and Tarpals were working on while Jar Jar was Jar Jarring.
Mm-hmm.
And we do get a corny Gungan moment when Tarpals is like, no, Grievous, your droid army is deactivated, and he pushes like one of them, and they all just like domino all the way around in this in this big circle.
So did they have to set him up that way for that to happen, or were they already standing in that position?
Ooh, that's a good question. That was a setup.
Okay. Yeah. It was way too convenient. But I agree with you. So like in last week, closing up with the idea that the Water War arc was way too long, they stretched it out. This is, I think, a good moment of when we get a story detail that just jumps to the end, and I'm like you. It's fine. I don't need to have seen that action because it's a thing we've seen happen over and over. You know, deactivating droids is fairly commonplace with where we are in the show now.
And I do feel like there was a little bit of dialogue earlier in the episode, either by Padme or Anakin or somebody saying, you know, like, oh, we need to deactivate the droids. Like that's going to be key to the success of this mission. It might be when Padme and Tarpals are talking. I don't remember.
That's all
exactly.
it is. Yeah, it's just Padme and Tarpals like talking back and forth, and Padme is like, "Well, Tarpals, you need to deactivate the droid so we can get Grievous." That's all it is. That's all I need.
Mm-hmm.
Like for the purpose of this story, like it's not about deactivating the droids; it's about capturing Grievous. I'm good there.
Yep.
You know.
Grievous, however, is definitely. He's not deterred, so he's ready to fight just all of the Gungans by himself.
Pretty much, yeah. Mm-hmm.
And he's doing a decent job of it at first. I had a note that it's raining I don't really remember seeing like rain before.
Like in general, in the show.
No, in the show, not in general. I mean, it fucking rains here all the time. It's rained here where I live.
No, I mean just like
for like the last 6 months.
I feel like we've seen rain on this show though.
Have we? I don't know.
Yes. I mean, we've gone back to Camino, right?
Yeah, we've been to Camino, but we've always been inside, I think. And I wouldn't even, like, thinking of rain, like, I wouldn't even think of Camino. But either way, this weather element stuck out as a cool another layer of what was going on in this instant.
All right. Yeah.
It felt
I didn't
nice.
notice it at all.
Go back and watch it again because it does. It's like a slow, big, fat raindrops coming down. I don't know. It just felt cool. I was like, all right, it's raining too. Like, not only is Grievous's, his army is shut down, and he didn't even talk to the guy that he thought he was talking to, but now it's raining on him, and he's still holding his own. He was doing pretty good, and then Tarpals comes up and fights Grievous one-on-one and does a damn good job.
Yeah.
And then ends up getting stabbed through the chest, right?
Yeah, something like that. Somewhere in the torso. It's not good. Not good for Tarpals.
So, not good for Tarpals. It's a little bit sad. And Grievous is like, what's he say? Like you've been murdered essentially. And Tarpals is like, no, I didn't. Like, you didn't kill me. I sacrificed myself. And then straight stabs Grievous like from waist up underneath ribcage out through neck hole.
Yeah.
And then calls for the attack, and all the other Gungans are like throwing their little blue energy glob ball bombs.
Yeah.
At Grievous, and the Gungan warriors kind of do what Jar Jar claimed they could in the Phantom Menace. He said we had a grand old army, right? And they attacked him fast and swift, and spears through the arms and legs at, like the wrist and ankle joints and shoulders and everything else. And Grievous is subdued, man. It's
very subdued. Yes.
It was pretty freaking awesome, if you ask me.
Yeah.
So what happens next, man?
So we jump over to another scene with Dooku and Darth Sidious.
Yep.
They discover that Grievous has been captured. And then they figure out that Anakin is still on the chase of Richelieu, and they figure out a way to try and trap Anakin and then take him hostage.
Lure him to where Dooku is.
Basically. And Dooku just happens to be there, because why not? So then, let's see. Liu does indeed lure Anakin into where he is.
Which is... So the way he does that is basically by parking his speeder bike outside the front door and then just leaving the front door unlocked.
Basically, yeah. So, Liu goes in there first and then meets with Dooku, but then Dooku kills Liu because he was just been annoying.
Yeah, because he was bitching like, hey, this wasn't part of the deal. Like, when do I get my comeuppance? And Dooku's like, you never had any.
Right. Like,
you're just a pawn in my game, and I sacrifice my pawns. And lightsabers him through the torso.
Yep. So he's out of the picture.
Richelieu down.
Yep. So then, let's see. So Dooku then does talk to Anakin and talks about how the Separatists were behind the invasion of Naboo from Episode 1.
Yep.
And then they basically just get into another lightsaber duel, right?
Yeah, Anakin does ask him, like, oh, were you part of the Separatists, like, all the way back then? And Dooku says, like, the Sith have been behind it from the beginning. Like, the Sith have always been there. And the Sith will always be there. And then they start to fight. And Dooku's got, like, this on-again, off-again fighting thing. Like,
he's, like, letting the droid... Like, there's a group of droid bodyguards near him. So he's kind of letting them do the bulk of the work.
And then, like, he'll step in at, like, key moments.
Right.
Is he just trying to wear Anakin down, or is he just old and tired, or is he just fucking with them, or...
I think all of it. All of the above.
Okay.
You know?
Okay.
That's kind of what I got. You know, it's not a bad duel. It's sort of interesting how Anakin has to, like, switch gears between fighting Dooku and fighting droid bodyguards, right? Especially considering his and Dooku's history.
Yeah, I thought it was nice that, like, it had that added element of, like, that mixing of organic and inorganic fighting styles that Anakin would have to kind of switch back and forth.
Yeah, and I kind of like that it wasn't just a straight repeat of the Attack of the Clones fight, you know. Just that there was another element to it besides just these two facing off yet again.
Yeah, I agree with you there. I do feel sometimes in the show that droids are either way overpowered or way underpowered, depending on the circumstance. Because even in Revenge of the Sith, like in the bridge scene where Grievous is there and Anakin and Obi-Wan are there and Sheev's there and everybody's there and whatnot, and the like the Magna droids are there. Like, those Magna droids are taken out pretty easily. But then when you see, like, Magna droids in the Clone Wars, like, there's some tough SOBs, right?
Right.
And then Commando droids are, like, another level. And then battle droids and super battle droids, it just kind of depends. Like, sometimes they're super hardy, and sometimes, you know, off-screen they're all shut down and fall down like dominoes.
Yeah. You know. No big deal. But yeah, so pretty much at the end of this duel, Anakin loses, gets disarmed, gets knocked out.
Yeah, he is force lightninged into a coma, essentially.
Yep. So then we cut over to Dooku calling Padme and says, guess who I got? We got Anakin. He tortures Anakin via holocall. And basically says, hey, we'll give you Anakin if you give us back Grievous.
Yep.
Jar Jar is there to hear the conversation. And Padme basically says that they cannot make that deal because Grievous being captured could end the war. And Jar Jar says, hey, but he's our friend. Like, that is also important, right?
Right. Like, basically, he would do it for you. You should do it for him.
So then Padme agrees with Jar Jar and says, yes, you're correct. We need to make this switch. This is a thing we need to do.
Yeah, she does get a little coaxing from Leone as well. Like, hey, Jar Jar's right. You should listen to him. Do the right thing, not the correct thing.
Yes. So the exchange is made. It happens pretty quickly and pretty unceremoniously, you know. Ship lands, they make the exchange, Grievous gets pulled over, Anakin gets dropped off.
Grievous has a pretty awesome, like, detainment thing going on.
Yes, I did make that note.
Where he's got like a fishbowl over his head and a fishbowl over both of his double fists.
Yes.
And they're kind of connected together with like a Y. Can Grievous see out of this thing?
I think he can, yes.
Okay. Because Anakin is drug out, unconscious, face down. So he doesn't see Grievous. But Grievous sees Anakin. Which gives me question to the line, I thought you'd be older. Right? Because he saw him. Like, it's just... And I know that the Clone Wars had to do this thing where they had to Scooby-Doo Anakin and Grievous for the entire series. Like,
right.
Anakin goes in one door, Grievous comes out another door, you know? And this is the closest they come to a face-to-face interaction. And I like that Anakin is, like, nearly unconscious, face down, being dragged across the field, right? But I feel like there should have been something that would have kept Dooku from even having, like, a visual interaction with Anakin. Even though I'm sure that, you know, in all of the holo feeds and the news reports and the tactical droids looking up information on Wikipedia and all that shit, right, that Grievous would have been well informed of the height, age, weight, gender, eye color, everything of Anakin Skywalker, right?
Does he know that that's Anakin on the ground getting pulled across?
I think so.
Yeah.
Maybe not at the moment, but he definitely does. He would have to after the fact. But I would imagine that he does. I mean, if C-3PO was there, he would definitely already know, because 3PO would have been like, "Oh, we're going to trade you for Master Anakin."
Right.
You know.
Yeah. So yeah, my point is, like, maybe he finds out later, but he didn't make, like, a mental note of, like, what this guy looks like, right?
Well,
like,
he does.
Oh, that's Anakin, right?
He does chuckle when he walks past Anakin.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so he's laughing at him.
That kind of sound, man.
That kind of made
undignified drag. You know.
Yeah. I don't know. I just kind of assumed that he knew.
Yeah.
Who he was being traded for, but that's like that's the only naysay that I have.
Yeah.
And it's not even like a full Filoni baloney, but it's
it was like the best they could do, I think, you know, considering what needs to be established between the two, which is nothing.
Right.
So basically, a trade happens. Dooku flies off. Anakin gets recovered. And basically Boss Leone and Queen Niutni talk about how... Yeah, they basically talk about how good Jar Jar was able to help out in making sure the peace is maintained between the Gungans and the rest of Naboo.
Yeah, he's given accolades.
Yes.
You know, good for him. And
so that's pretty much it, right? Cue loud music.
That's the end of it. Yep.
Yeah, cue loud music. So that's all we got in that one.
So I got a few questions.
Go for
it. I had brought up the voice of Leone earlier, and you had said it's kind of a deeper version of a Jar Jar voice. Now, Ahmed Best voices both of these characters.
Right.
And when I first heard Leone, do you remember back when we had a substitute voice actor for Jar Jar?
Yeah.
And it was off a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like this is Ahmed doing an impression of whoever did the voice of Jar Jar when he wasn't there.
That makes sense to me. I would buy that, yeah.
I don't know if that's fact, but Leone's voice really reminds me of the substitute voice actor.
Yeah.
So I almost feel like Ahmed one day was like doing an impression of the other guy, and Dave Filoni's like, I like that. We're going to turn this into a thing.
Oh boy.
And everything was based off of that. The reason that I asked how long it had been since Prisoners, since last week's episode, is because, like, the Gungans just potentially sacrificed themselves, sacrificed their safety to go and help people on another planet for the Republic, because the Republic needed help and they're the only ones that could get the job done. Mm-hmm. And then this week, they're like, nope, fuck you guys. Like,
Right.
we're going to attack the Republic-loving people on our planet for reasons.
Hey, man. People get persuaded pretty easily, it sounds like, for the Gungans, so.
It sounds like it. Especially when Boss Nass is on vacation.
Yep. Wherever he may
and
be. You know.
They put Jar Jar's cousin in charge.
Right. He's just enjoying retirement. You know, Boss Nass is off. But yeah, I don't know. That's all. I got nothing for that. So.
Were you sad when Captain Tarples met his demise?
Yeah, that was because I did have the thought. I'm like, oh yeah, I guess we never do see him in Revenge of the Sith or anywhere else, huh? So
that's one of those things where if you asked me before watching this episode, hey, was Captain Tarples in Revenge of the Sith like in the funeral scene? I would have been like, duh, and then I would be like, wait, I need to go find out. Like, let me do my research so I don't make incorrect statements.
Yeah.
But I would have assumed that he was. So, and I would have assumed incorrectly.
Indeed.
You got anything else for this before we get into thumbs up, thumbs down?
We can go thumbs up, thumbs down. You want to start?
Yeah, I give this one a big old fat thumbs up.
All right.
You know, a Jar Jar centric episode and really a Gungan centric episode, and this is a lot of fun, and I really enjoyed it.
Mm-hmm.
I got, you know, the worst thing I have to say about this episode is like the questionable bit of Grievous
racism.
Well, yes, there was that.
But yes.
Of Anakin and Padme being speciesist.
Yes.
Right. And then logistically, like, Grievous being conscious during this exchange and walking past Anakin.
Right.
That's it.
Yeah.
Other than that, I'm like, this is a smooth episode. Like, it's cool. I like it.
Yeah. I'm in full agreement with you. I liked it. It was fun. Yeah,
it's been a while. I think it's been a while since we gave a double thumbs up to something, and yeah, I think this one deserves it, man. So
yeah, it was definitely just a fun episode. It was there, and like, I think they found a story to work Jar Jar's personality into. Does that make sense? Like, absolutely. Whereas, like, in episode 1, Jar Jar's personality was working against the story, and it was working against the tone. Goo. Yeah. So here, at least, like, the premise in which they came up with put Jar Jar in a situation that kind of added to the mayhem of what was happening already.
And you know what? Not only that, like, in universe, in the story itself, it makes sense to put Jar Jar in the position to have to do this thing, right? Yes. Because it is Leonie's his cousin, and they look familiar, you know, they look similar. So he is able to, like, pass off as Boss Leonie. It's not like just some... It's not like sending him to Toydaria to talk to King Katunko about joining the Republic. That's a bad idea. Right, for sure. That is setting yourself up for failure. This is like, dude, this guy could pass. Like, you know, Jar Jar, basically just keep your mouth shut and say, hey, we're canceling the attack, and just leave it at that. Yeah. And like, Jar Jar has... Yeah, Jar Jar has, like, presented in front of the Senate chambers. Right? So it's not like he doesn't have public speaking skills. Right. He may not be quite articulate, and he's not a wordsmith. For sure. For sure. But I agree. Yeah, there's nothing about this that seems off. So. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, this one was fun, man. It was cool. Yeah. So, yeah, perfectly fine episode. Yeah. I agree. Especially coming off the very, very, very boring 3 previous episodes. Like, we get a nice, fun little episode here, you know? I 100% agree with you. And watching this one after Prisoners makes Prisoners even worse.
Yeah, it didn't help. It didn't help Prisoners out at all. So, anything else you got for this episode?
No, the only thing that I got is that as when we started this thing, we did a whole bunch of jumping around in the timeline as far as when things were released and whatever, but season 4 actually runs straight through from start to finish. We don't have any time jumps, so up next week is season 4 episode 5, Mercy Mission, and then we'll continue on after that all the way through the end of season 4 before we get our next time jump as far as episodes go.
Indeed. As always, we like to give a shout out to Kevin Warren at They Call Me K-Dub on Twitter for putting together the cover art, and also Lindsay Strange Fancy Music at gmail.com, who put together the jingle at the beginning and end of every episode. If you want to contact us, the easiest way to do that will be notthenerds.com. That has everything you need there, including every single episode.
That's right.
As we get into the hundreds of episodes here, triple digits, just a note that if you're listening on iTunes and you want to start from the beginning, iTunes actually only holds 100 episodes, which is really interesting. So, notthenerds.com should house all of them in some form for you to listen to.
I believe so.
Yeah, but beyond that, until next week, I've been Lorenzo Fawn.
Kevin Horde here.
These aren't the nerds you're looking for.
Bye-bye.